Hi there, welcome to this week's video, and this week I am talking with Dr. Traci Lowenthal. She's a licensed clinical psychologist who has a private practice in both Redlands, California and Claremont, California. And she's here to talk to us about how we can make our paperwork, all of our documentation, more affirming. So Traci, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice and what it is that you do.
Okay, thank you so much, and thanks for having me. This is really fun to do this with you. Um, like you said, I have a small private practice. I have offices in Redlands and Claremont, and I have two folks that work for me. Patricia Gonzalez is an intern, and she works with folks who have experienced trauma. She also works with the LGBTQIA community, as I do. And then I have another person, Gabriel Arroyo, who recently just got licensed. So we're really excited for him,
Oh, congrats
and
to
he
him.
works. Yeah, it's really exciting. It's fun to be a part of the process with someone as they
Yeah.
work toward licensure. And so he works with kids and couples and families. And kids who have been diagnosed with diabetes is something that he's really passionate about.
Oh,
So our practice is really kind of it's focused on LGBTQIA concerns, but it's also got all these little sub niches that keep popping up. So it's been a really cool evolution to see all that take place.
very cool. And how did you get into to that specialty, or what interested you about that in particular?
Yeah, I initially my one of my first clinical training placements was the AIDS Service Center in Pasadena. I knew I wanted to work with HIV positive folks, and that placement I got a lot of exposure to folks who identified as gay as well. And then I got I was trying to be an overachiever, and I said I'll work with anybody. Send me anybody. And this
Mm-hmm.
is in 2003. And my second client was a trans woman of color, and really blew my mind all of the ways that society isn't at the time wasn't welcoming of this particular community, and all the difficulties that they face, and all the intersections of parenting and culture and sexuality and gender identity, and all these
Mm-hmm.
really rich opportunities to learn about someone. And so I loved the work that I got to do with her, and then I got kind of known as the person who would see trans people, because not a lot of people were, even where I was working. And so that is just something that's continued to happen over the last 11 or so years. And so it was serendipity that I got into this work. It wasn't a
Very cool.
plan, but it's worked out really well. I love the work.
Awesome, awesome. And so, Traci, you had actually approached me about helping people, helping other therapists with how to integrate that into their practice as far as paperwork goes. So, how can we make our paperwork more affirming? And so, real quick, would you mind letting us know why this kind of applies to everyone? So, even if I don't have a practice where I plan on seeing someone who identifies as trans, what are we going to talk about that could apply to me?
Yeah, I think it's really important for every clinician to have paperwork that feels affirming, because for people who are sexually or diverse with regard to their gender, every time that they experience being othered, every time that they experience not fitting in, not having a box to check, not feeling like they get to identify themselves in the way that feels comfortable for them, every time that happens, it's a microaggression. It's traumatic. It's upsetting. And we obviously can't make every single person feel 100% comfortable, but if we do a little thing like change how our paperwork looks, someone walking in is going to know that you're a safe place and a safe person to speak with. It's really an easy thing to do, and it just opens up the conversation, and it creates safety and trust right away for someone who might identify that way.
Wonderful, thanks. Yeah, and I think we hear a lot about that with race and ethnicity.
Hmm.
Being able to check multiple boxes and that kind of thing. So I think that it's a new eye opener for us to think about that with gender as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So why don't you go ahead and share? I know you've prepared a few tips for us. So how can we do this?
Okay, I think the first thing that I would recommend doing is take a look at your paperwork and look at it from that perspective. Look at your paperwork and imagine that you might be a queer identified 19-year-old college student. Or imagine that you're a 65-year-old person who's transitioning from male to female. Just kind of look at your paperwork from that lens. And one of the first things, one of the easiest things you can do is to alter how you ask someone about their name. And it's really
Mm,
simple. You know, because of our record keeping requirements, we have to use a person's legal name.
right.
But you can collect that in a way that isn't disturbing or offensive to someone. For your viewers that may not know, for a lot of people who identify as trans or gender queer or gender fluid, their birth name is a name that they don't often feel comfortable sharing. They don't often feel comfortable talking about. And yet you need that information if they haven't changed their name yet. And so
Yeah.
you want to put, what I do is I have a line that says legal name and a blank. So they know that I recognize that that's the purpose for collecting that, is that it's still their legal name. And then beneath that, I have name to be used / pronouns to be used and a blank line. So that lets me know right away that there is a name that they've chosen for themselves that they want me to use. And that goes, again, a long way to making someone feel safe.
Very cool. Yeah, and I could see how that could actually apply in so many different situations. And if it doesn't apply to someone, it doesn't like stand out as odd either.
Right.
Um, so that's a really cool way that, yeah, I mean, and that could take us less than 5 minutes to fix that on our forms.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then I also want to recommend that people, you know, we've a lot of us have heard the term preferred pronoun,
Hmm.
and I've taken that out of my paperwork, and now I just have pronoun
Okay.
because, for instance, my pronouns are she. They're not my preferred pronouns. They're just my pronouns. You know. So even those subtle little differences can make a big impact on someone who's looking at your paperwork.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. That's
Yeah.
really, really easy to do.
Yeah, and then I also have, instead of male or female, I just have gender and a blank line. Because how people identify is so diverse. There's so many different ways that they could identify. And so giving them the space to articulate what it is that fits them most appropriately, what term fits them most appropriately. Or if they put a question mark, like that's really telling too, right? That's a whole conversation you'll get to have.
Yeah, that's true. And that's one of the things that I know I like about having blank spaces instead of having checkbox and things, because anytime you have checkboxes or things for people to circle, you're automatically limiting the answers you're going to get. So
Yeah,
if you have a blank line like that, it opens it up to anything.
absolutely. Yeah. That's
Very
really
cool.
cool. And then the other thing I had mentioned to you before that I think is important is having a question somewhere. I don't know, I have a rating scale for concerns that people are coming in with, and it's got, I don't know, 30 different things on there. And one of the things that I ask people to rate their discomfort about or concerns about are identity. And so I put identity, but then in parentheses I have gender, sexuality, ethnicity, culture, all in parentheses. So that one question leads to a rich conversation because it can
Hmm.
apply to so many different parts of someone's identity.
Oh, yeah. And that one question can lead into so many reasons why someone might be seeking therapy. Um, and I could see how that's a really important question to have if you see younger clients, like with
Hmm.
kids, and allow them that flexibility to identify things that they're questioning or feeling uncomfortable with.
Right, right. And you can also put religion in that same category too, or
Mm.
spiritual beliefs too, because all those things intersect and can lead to a very rich conversation about various parts of themselves.
Yeah, yeah. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, that is super, super helpful. And I think the best part is that it's really easy to implement.
Hmm. Oh,
Um,
can I add one more thing?
of course.
I forgot, I think if people are using online software for their record keeping,
Uh huh.
um, I realized I use Therapy Notes, and Therapy Notes will allow you to send a reminder to someone, like with a text or an email,
Uh-huh.
about their appointment. But in Therapy Notes, it has your client's legal name. And so you have to be mindful of that if you're working with someone who's gender fluid or gender queer or trans, because they're going to get a notification saying, "Hey, Sam, your appointment is with Dr. Traci tomorrow." And if that's not the name that they're using, that could be really upsetting. And
Yeah,
so what
it's
I do
another
is
one of
I
those
put their
things like, oh,
exactly, exactly. So I put their legal name first. You have to do that, and then I put in parentheses their name that they've told me that they want me to use, and then I have a conversation at the intake when I get their agreement to receive those notifications. I just say, I want to let you know that your legal name is going to be part of that reminder. And if that's too upsetting, if that's too problematic, I don't have to send those reminders, but I'm also going to put your chosen name, so you'll see both names. And I just want to let you know that's not a mistake, that I have to do that because of the way the software works. You
very
know?
cool, very cool. Yeah, and I mean, so much of it is just communicating with people, and I think that's kind of like a whole other topic, but, making sure that you let people know as far as communication exactly, what are the possible negatives around that and what to expect.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it also communicates that you are doing your best to meet them where they are and to respect who they are, and again, that goes a long way to building trust pretty quickly, I
Yeah.
think.
Very cool. Awesome. And that's totally something I wouldn't have thought of, but I'm sure plenty of people who are listening and maybe have an EHR would be like, well, how do I put that in there? So
Yeah.
thanks for throwing that one in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and on the EHR, you still have to mark male or female on Therapy Notes anyway, unfortunately. I think Simple Practice is actually ahead of the game on that. I think there's various options
Oh, cool.
there. I do recall looking at theirs, and they have some more options, which is really great. So I'm hoping Therapy Notes catches up in that regard. But you can just put their gender identity in your intake note, even though you can't mark it in the form.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. So ways to kind of navigate through
Hmm.
those waters until things catch up.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing tips. Those are super easy to follow. I love it. Um,
Yeah.
and how should people get a hold of you if they have more specific questions or they're interested in reaching out to you personally?
Yeah, they can always use our website, which is creativeinsightscounseling.com. We have the website. We're on Facebook also under the same name. People can email me. I'm Dr. Traci at creativeinsightscounseling.com. And then I know we talked about being able to answer questions
Mm-hmm.
on your website or blog about this too. So if people have questions as they watch this or read, then I'm happy to pop in there and respond to those specific questions too.
Awesome. Yeah. So if you do have a question, please feel free to leave it in the comments below. And Traci and I will be monitoring that and making sure you get your questions answered. But feel free to reach out to her as well, and definitely check out her website. She's got a lot of cool stuff going on. And thank you so much for spending time sharing with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for putting this out there. I think it's really important, and there's a lot of clinicians who are new to this work or haven't really just thought about how this applies to the paperwork piece, and so I really appreciate you doing it.
Yeah, thanks. All right. Have a
Yeah.
good evening.
Okay, you too. Thanks.